Now I have the pleasure to move to our next panelist, Dr. Letitia Adelaide Appiah, who is a board member of Partners in Population and Development, and she is Executive Director of National Population Council of Ghana. Dr. Letitia Adelaide Appiah, a physician and senior public health specialist, is currently the Executive Director of the National Population Council of Ghana, the highest statutory body set up by the Constitution to advise government on population-related issues. Dr. Appiah was the Director of Health Services for Letsukuku Kowor Municipality of Ghana since its inception in 2008, and she has won several awards. In 2018, she was inducted in the Hall of Fame as an honorary fellow of the Fred Tsai Institute for her outstanding contribution to the sexual and reproductive health rights sector in Ghana. So Dr. Appiah, please, you have the floor, and you have 10 minutes for your presentation, please.
Okay, thank you so much for the introduction. I must thank PPD China for organizing this conference, honorable ministers, panelists, participants connected worldwide. It is my pleasure to deliver this speech on the 17th International Inter-Ministerial Conference on South-South Cooperation in Population and Development. Taking stock and looking ahead in post-COVID-19 crisis implementation of the Nairobi Commitments through South-South cooperation. We will look at the policy coordination, sharing of knowledge, lessons learned and good practices, and adaptation of good practices. The government of Ghana seeks to focus on evidence-based, action-driven solutions to address the critical challenges that the country is facing in attaining the 3 zeros. That is 0 unmet need for family planning, 0 preventable maternal deaths, and 0 gender-based violence, including harmful practices like child marriage and female genital mutilation through many avenues, including South-South cooperation. I would like to acknowledge that many countries, including Ghana, have done a lot in implementing the ICPD program of action, the critical role of South-South cooperation, the work of the United Nations, and all other partners. However, considering the fact that the teenage pregnancy rate in Ghana is 14%, and we have a very high unmet need for family planning, more needs to be done, and most importantly, more efficiently, in a coordinated manner, focusing on the big picture. COVID-19 pandemic threatens to widen the inequality gap in all forms and shapes, including the reproductive health services. We know that there's an increased violence, especially during this pandemic, and so we should be mindful of what drives inequality in any form, because inequality in any form fuels conflict and instability. And so the National Population Council of Ghana really now seeks to link the unmet need for family planning, high fertility rates, and teenage pregnancy to instability and conflict. Because a lot of us are talking about conflicts, but then we're not looking at the root cause of conflict, which is inequality. The inadequate attention of meeting reproductive health needs of women and girls also creates the condition for conflict. And that is what we really want to bring to the fore so that we can focus a bit more on reproductive health and meet the needs of everybody. You know, we know that conflict resolution is by our religious leaders. And so we're using that avenue, reproductive health conflict, to seek partnership or stronger partnership with religious organizations. Also, concerning sustainable development, where there's conflict and there's no peace, there's no sustainable development. And the vicious cycle we've concluded is broken by honoring women, meeting their reproductive health needs, and harnessing the talents of all through quality relevant education and lifelong learning. And so we really want to put together the energy between meeting reproductive health needs and lifelong learning. A lot of our countries are focusing on education. Our country is focusing on education with free education. And so if we focus a bit more on reproductive health, it makes education more effective and efficient. So that is what we seek to do. We know that we can either choose to meet the unmet need for family planning of all women in reproductive age, and as a result, reduce the population growth rate of countries in sub-Saharan Africa, including Ghana, or continue to maintain the high unmet need for family planning and grapple with high maternal mortality and morbidities, high dependency ratio, high unemployment, underemployment, and conflict. We really seek to move away the reproductive health discourse from the silo discussion and look at the big picture, the broad interconnectedness of everything, of dependency ratio, of unemployment, of conflicts. How does it fit in? Reference to gender-based violence, including harmful practices such as child marriage and female genital mutilation, the question we seek to ask is, how is it contributing to meeting our sustainable development goals by the year 2030? How is harmful practices contributing to meeting the sustainable development goals by the year 2020? How is such culture enhancing our individual and collective lives, remembering that culture is dynamic and should enhance life? How does it fit into the Africa we want, the Agenda 2063 for Africa with its 7 aspirations? I would want to state that aspiration 6 of the Africa we want states that, and I quote, Africa whose development is people-driven, relying on the potential of African people, especially its women and youth, and caring for children. How does child marriage and female genital mutilation help develop human potential? Those are some of the questions that we really seek to ask to broaden the discussion so we can get more people looking at population and development. In our view, policy coordination should consider effective ways of addressing culture and other religious practices and interpretations that hinder individual development. So coordination should really look beyond the regular normal coordination, but a bit more into the cultural aspect. How do we confront the culture to make sure that it does not stand in the way of reproductive health services? So the cultural and religious practices interpretation that hinder reproductive health rights and services. We're also looking at good practices. So how many developed countries, for instance, have such high unmet need for family planning and gender-based violence, and they have developed to be first world? We're looking at lessons learned. So any lessons we can learn from them regarding meeting the reproductive health needs of citizens. And that is why I'm very excited that Indonesia is all out to offer learning grounds for other countries. We need to ask the question if sustainable development is possible without meeting the 3 transformational goals of unmet need for family planning, reducing preventable maternal deaths, and gender-based violence, including child marriage and female genital mutilation. So looking at the big picture of sustainable development goal, how does these unmet needs fit into it? We actually are looking at the linkage between peace, economic development, women empowerment, and sustainable socioeconomic development, looking at reproductive health needs as central to this. For policy coordination, the purpose of policy coordination is to ensure that different departments and groups work in sync. It brings harmony in carrying out activities to achieve organizational objectives efficiently. How is our cultural patriarchal societies hindering this? We need to look at that. We cannot continue to unlook that and hope to make the leaps and bounds that we have to make, especially in post-COVID, where it's really threatening to widen the inequality gap. The other thing we focus on is knowledge sharing. We have to appreciate the fact that knowledge can at times confront the status quo. It can at times confront our traditional beliefs. How is knowledge informing our decisions at individual, community, and national levels to bridge the inequality gap and improve our collective well-being? We have to appreciate the fact that in the 21st century, quality and quantity should be our focus whilst looking at the big picture, and appreciate that scientific knowledge can challenge the status quo and the traditions we hold dear. How can we engage to eliminate such practices that hurt us? How do we come to the realization that sometimes holding on does more damage than letting go? How can South-South cooperation be of support in this regard? Because I know in the countries that have made it, they gave way, some traditional practices gave way to science. So how do we learn from that? And then we move on to the lessons learned and good practices. Lessons learned and good practices should help us appreciate the fact that meeting the reproductive health needs of women everywhere is important for our national development, and not just national, but international development as well, because it bridges the inequality gap. Finally, adaptation of good practices. It is critical that we adapt and adopt good practices for better results. And I would quote here from Mao Zedong, said, and I quote, "Investigation may be likened to a long month of pregnancy and solving the problem to the day of birth." So how do we make sure that our investigations end up in a solution? So it is not just talking about it, but putting in actions, evidence-based, action-oriented solutions, so we can leverage on each other's successes and each other's successes. So how do we leverage? In conclusion, how can we leverage on the South-South cooperation beyond the norm to improve our lives? I think we have to break the glass ceiling and move beyond the regular collaboration and look at how we can support each other in confronting some of the cultural practices and some of the religious practices that stand in the way. Because I think they are very big hurdles that we need to surmount to make progress. And South-South cooperation has been so supportive, and I know that with our collective collaboration, we will be able to surmount. I thank you for your attention.